Hey guys, we're on episode 4 of Ask Yourself Redefining Passion and Career.
Ask Yourself is a learning discussion where we seek questions to be more intentional of how we understand ourselves. We are two friends who are trying to make sense of ourselves and the world together.
Hey everyone, I'm Nina Guno. I report news stories, which reflects my love to learn, ask questions, and recognize our shared humanity.
And I'm Elisha Corpus. I consult with companies and individuals on culture transformation, and this is where my curiosity for behavior and mindset changes comes from. So, let's do a little check in. I think we might benefit from that given everything that's
Yeah,
happening everywhere. So, yeah, how are you
well,
today?
it's been a crazy news cycle. Um, I'm okay. Like personally, I'm okay, but it's just the events around me just seem to keep getting crazier. Like
Mhm.
you'd think coronavirus is the worst thing that could
Right.
happen to us as a people, but no. This past week has proven otherwise. Both in the U.S. and here in the Philippines. So if you guys have been following the news, or if you've been taking a mental health break from the news, that's fine too. Um, I guess to bring some context to how I've been feeling, I watched the Lord of the Rings reunion um yesterday, and it was out nung Sunday, I think. It was so I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. I just super love it as a great action movie, and a lot of themes that they have, which of course are a lot of them are about good versus evil.
Mhm.
And seeing the cast together, they're just this really sweet cast, of different. Although a lot of them are white men,
Mhm.
they're all just really kind to each other. It was so sweet seeing them together again, and it gave me such a sense of hope. Um, Seeing them, because they also repeated some lines from the movies, and there was just so much. It was so sweet.
Mhm.
It was a reminder talaga that you have to be hopeful even when things are bleak, like holding on to the good that there is
Mhm.
even when there's so much darkness.
Mhm.
So I think that was such a nice reminder, especially now that there's so much news that's so heartbreaking. I mean, you've been following it too, like the racism, the police brutality in the US, which also reminds me of the discrimination and police brutality here.
Yeah.
We also have the anti-terror bill, which could limit our freedom of expression and dissent. So in all of that, there's just you just really have to be hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that it's so nice that you got to watch something like that to uplift your energy in one way or another. Um, me, I think like at the start of this week, it was really more. I was very sad and anxious about everything because in the morning, like I would see posts from my friends here in the Philippines and all the news here in the Philippines. And then at night, that's when you'll see like the posts from my friends in the US and what they're seeing over there, what they're doing over there. And so it was just like a 24-hour news cycle of all the bad things happening in the world. And so
right.
it was just really heavy for a while. But I think as the protests went on, like I'm talking about the US specifically because a lot of the statements from business leaders that I read, they're from US business leaders, and a lot of these companies, they really committed to, not just giving money or, donating whatever to organizations. They committed to actually having initiatives to practice inclusion in their companies, to be able to change those behaviors and mindsets, and really
Wow.
coming from like a culture transformation perspective, right? If a company is able to do that, especially multinational companies that are everywhere in the world, like that's a huge audience they're reaching, and it can just multiply to many different communities. And yeah, so for me, I really liked that I got reminded of that impact that people in the business sector can make. And so yeah, I think for me now, I'm in the place where I really admired what the businesses in the US did, and what I want now, and what I really want to see businesses here in the Philippines,
Yeah,
and leaders, like the big leaders here in the Philippines. I'd love to see them talking about these things happening in our country, like play a
exactly.
role, because you have a unique position in all of
Right.
this.
Yeah, I haven't really seen a lot of that, but I hope it's something that we can push forward. I think we've seen already how much people value their freedom of expression with all the dissent against the anti terror bill. So, yeah, I think that's something that should also reflect in our businesses too.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think it's important we set up that context because our topic for today, right? Passion and career and how we're redefining that. It can sound like it's a whole other world to think about your passion and your career. But given the context we're in today, I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the air. There's a lot of questioning about, okay, what is the meaning of what I'm doing anyway? Like, what is my life for? And I think just for me, that's the big why of why I'd like to talk about this topic today. It's really when we're in a crisis situation, you reevaluate the things in your life, and it might be the perfect opportunity to start reflecting on some of those things.
yeah. For me, this topic also resonates a lot because we saw in the past weeks that there have been graduations online, and it just made me think back about how I graduated 5 years ago. So you can guess my age from that. Um, and how that was a time that I had so many questions on my mind and I felt so lost. Also, I mean, similar, like, and I was having an existential crisis. So
Hmm.
I have just so much empathy now also for those graduates that they're in this really kind of chaotic, even more chaotic than before, this
Yeah.
world, and now they have to go look for a job and
Hmm.
figure out their whole direction in life. So I think with all that uncertainty, I would love to discuss some questions and some kind of mindsets, so that they could also be given that clarity that I didn't have before, and the
Hmm.
clarity that they need all the more now. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just so many layers of complexity and uncertainty that we all have to navigate through in the next
yeah.
few months. I'm sure it'll be even more layers. Hmm. Okay, so where do we start?
Okay, where do we start? I think we can start with talking about our perceptions of a career,
Okay.
because I feel like that's where I felt so stuck in, thinking about what my parents told me about having a career, what professors and people around me said about having a career.
Mhm.
So I went ahead and looked at the dictionary.
She's
I
a resident
consulted,
dictionary
yeah,
looker.
consulted Merriam-Webster just so that we have like we're all on the same page.
Mhm.
So Merriam-Webster describes or defines a career as a profession for which one trains and which is undertaken as a permanent calling. Okay,
Whew,
so
yeah.
yeah.
So loaded.
I don't know if you what you make of that, but for me, I don't feel like everyone would agree with that definition now. Although I think it is something that fits into what previous generations would have looked at
Mm.
in terms of a career. I think this one seems to assume that we're gonna have a career for many
Mhm, mhm.
decades. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I think a lot of that narrative about like going to a company and then staying there until you retire, a lot of that is coming from people our parents' age. So think like the boomers of the world.
Mhm.
Some companies, like especially the ones that are very established and that are a bit older, they even have programs like hire to retire. So
Oh
it's really
yeah.
assuming that you're going to stay there for your whole life and until you have like multiple babies and whatnot. um I think though, if we look at where our parents are coming from and the age they're in, where they grew up and the kind of world that they saw around them, it does make a bit of sense that it's that
Mm-hmm.
stability that mattered to them, right? Because our parents, their parents were World War II age humans. And so a lot of them probably grew up not having any sense of stability.
Exactly.
And so probably when they were able to establish their own families, get jobs, having that stability is something that was just so precious. And that's what I think the boomers of the world, our parents, that's what they saw growing up. So it probably influenced the way they think about a career.
But now, I would say that our generation just lives in such very different
Mm-hmm.
times compared to them, and we also have a we have a different set of values because of that. So yeah, there's been so many changes that I think we have grown to be the type of the our mindset is more of you have to keep adapting
Mm-hmm.
even if something
Mm-hmm.
new happens. Like we're not super afraid of change,
Mm-hmm.
and we also have way more options now, which is cool. But also there's a thing called option
Yeah.
paralysis, so you can kind of get stuck with all the things that you're thinking of, that all the things that you can choose from. And I think that's also what happened to me. I think it's great, of course, that I had options. Like I was able to do a double major, so I finished two courses, and
Mm-hmm.
even when I got out of college, I didn't know what to do. And I think in part it was because I was thinking, oh gosh, now I have to choose that one path and
Mm.
stick to that for the rest of my life.
Your permanent calling.
Yeah, which is very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So maybe we can think
Mm-hmm.
about that as a question.
Yeah, because there are lots of beliefs, right? Like it has to be a calling. It has to be something you do for the rest of your life. It has to be that one thing. Like these are all beliefs that it came from somewhere, I'm sure, right? Like it's something we hear from our parents or peers or even the media, our movies, our TV.
Yeah.
So maybe our question could be something around like, what are my long held beliefs and where are these beliefs coming from? Because I think for me, as an example, I used to think that I will never ever be like a freelance or a self employed type of person. And that's because everywhere I look, like in movies or even with peers, they always make it seem like it's only the people who don't really care about work who go self employed. And so I always thought that, no, that's not me because, like, I like doing work, I'm not lazy, I'm okay with having a routine. And so I thought, okay, that's never gonna happen. And look where I'm at now. Like I'm a
Yeah.
self-employed consultant. So really, you have to have a moment where you question what these beliefs are and where are they coming from.
Yeah. I guess we can break that down, what
Mm-hmm.
those beliefs are, and we can look at it in a way that there's a healthy way of looking at it, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's kind of a toxic way that we're viewing career now. So I think for a healthy level, it's good to think of career as something that can give you some direction on the kind of
Mm-hmm.
training that you'll need. So they always say like, oh, you have to climb up the ladder, and I think that's good in the sense that okay, I have to have the skill by this certain time, and then when I do have those skills, and I can move on to the next level. So I think that's a good thing, right? So what else do
Yeah.
you think would be helpful about thinking about how we view career now?
Mm-hmm. What I like about that definition you gave earlier from Merriam Webster, I like the part about a profession for which one trains.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really do think that's something very important. Like what you said earlier, right? A lot of us now in our generation, we have a lot of options. And so there's this tendency to just, okay, I'll try this for like 2 months and then this for 2 months and then that's it. But you get a good scope of things, right? But you don't really get to dive into a specific topic and get the level of expertise needed to be able to really have a body of knowledge that's credible and that you can talk about and apply. And so I think at some level, you do need that training in that
Mm-hmm.
field you want to go into.
Right. I think there's really that value in having a depth of knowledge
Mm-hmm.
versus just a breadth of knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are unhealthy ways or toxic ways that we view career or
Mhm.
that we've been taught about careers?
Yeah. The one that I it gives me like a reaction when I look at that definition. I feel a lot of pressure when you say things like, "Oh, it's permanent and it's a calling." Like for me, that adds pressure to an already big decision that can give you a lot of anxiety in and of itself.
Right. That's so true. Yeah, there's so much pressure to stick to one career.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think my parents were always emphasizing that like you can't keep going from one job to the next, or else people will think you're flighty.
Mm.
And just full disclosure, I've had 3 jobs and I have zero regrets about it. So yeah, so I think like I'm glad that I didn't have to follow that, but that did give me a lot of anxiety, being so worried that
Mm-hmm.
oh my god, my next employer is gonna think like I can't commit. Have commitment issues. But anyway, another thing I think also is that although we do value having a depth of knowledge, like sticking to one thing for your entire life or thinking that you have to could also limit your learning.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just be consuming information just from your field alone when actually like making really good decisions or being able to level up your expertise needs a variety of perspectives.
Yeah, it's always a balance, right? Like you have to have a certain level of depth, but also you have to be aware that there are many fields out there that you can learn from, and there are many perspectives that will actually benefit you. And I think that's where when you're so young and just out of college, you don't really know a lot about the working world. It's that balance that can get a little bit confusing because the narratives you hear are you have to choose one or the other, but I don't really think that's it. Like when I do career coaching, a lot of my clients, they get anxious about that, like they either have to choose or experiment, and I'm like, well, it can be any of those choices. It's up to you to explain that to yourself and to whoever is hiring you, or to communicate that to your future managers. So I think at the end of the day, it's how well do you understand your choice anyway before you can think like go deep or try many things.
Right. So it's just really being intentional. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
no wrong way to go about it. I guess
Yeah.
if you're being true to yourself, yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
think in terms of that, it reminds me of a word that was thrown a lot when I was looking for a job, and it was passion. So
Ah.
it was such a big deal, like getting out of college and people were so okay. I was in college for 5 years, and in the school I went to, people graduated after 3 years. So I was kind of getting a lot of feedback about the working world, um, even before I got out. And there's so many were telling me about their frustrations, about how they didn't love their job. And, people were saying, like, just do what you love, look for something that you're really passionate about. Um, and this was also, it's also added to my anxiety because I really didn't know what
Mhm.
I was passionate about. So I was like, okay, am I going to be doomed to be unhappy if I don't find that? Yeah. What do you make of that, Elijah?
Yeah, I heard that too a lot. Also those terms like, oh, it has to be something you're willing to suffer for. That's what passion is. It's like it's very emotion driven. That's the
Mm,
sense I'm getting whenever people would talk about passion. And usually I would hear it from people who there's a bit there that they're complaining about how they're really not getting a lot of opportunities because it's all just no, but no, I can't find anything else. Like, this is what I love. This is the only thing that's making me happy. So I don't care if nothing is working out. Like, this is where I'm meant to be. So that's more of the context where I heard it from. And so for me it was always like, oh, I love how driven everyone is. Like, I love that energy. But also I get so tired after talking about these things.
Yeah, we can go into how we can look at passion in a healthy way and
Mhm.
also in a toxic way.
Yeah.
So for me, my personal experience about passion was that it clued me in and when I wasn't happy in a
Mm.
job anymore. So, well, one of the things I knew what I was interested in was writing. So I was thinking, okay, maybe that's my passion. And so one of the jobs I took was in communications for a government agency. So I did get to write, but it was writing for the website, writing emails to
Mhm.
customer complaints or our not customer but actually our own citizens complaining to us, and it was also writing press releases. And so it was cool that I got to write, but I realized, oh gosh, I'm not happy with doing this. So I think it was good that I was able to figure that out and then
Mhm.
be able to move on into the kind of writing that I liked, which was news writing and in particular features writing.
Mhm. Yeah, because really, at some level, you do have to enjoy what you are doing, right? It
Yeah.
has to be something that makes you happy, and and that's what passion is. Like, it can tell you what's something you enjoy, something that gives you satisfaction. Which reminds me, a question that we could probably use for self-reflection is related to that. Because
Oh,
in the workshops that I do about like your career, one of the questions I ask is, when was the last time you slept at night feeling satisfied? And that
wow.
really stumps a lot of people.
It does because I was lucky to have you in a workshop with my team, and it really made me think. But it's a great way to reflect because you get to think, oh, nga, no one was that last time, and it really clues you in into when you were happy, you were doing something that you were happy about.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So now at a toxic level, I think a lot of what I described earlier was passion at its most toxic, when it's
yeah,
all just very about emotions, and then you almost forget the rationality when it's very feelings based all the time. So that's
yeah,
probably one thing that can tell you your passion is maybe getting to a toxic or unhealthy level.
right. And it's really hard to sustain, I guess, your motivation to
Mhm.
work if it's really all based on emotion only. When
Yeah.
in reality, not everyone can pursue their passion. So I
Mhm.
think that's the other thing about it. So pursuing your passion is a privilege. And one, knowing your passion, I think you're really lucky if you
Mhm.
knew from the start that this is what you're passionate about and you can pursue it. That's a huge privilege. But also being able to pursue it, like it's not really everyone's reality. So I think going back to my experience, I was lucky that I could leave that job because I wasn't happy anymore. But what if I couldn't? What? And
Mhm.
I'm sure that happens to a lot of people. What if you couldn't do that? So I think that's why, although passion is great, it's also not. It shouldn't be the only thing that you really
Yeah,
think about
yeah.
when
Mhm.
choosing your job or choosing your career.
Mhm. Passion for me is very inward looking.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much about, I'll take into account what I like and what makes me happy in a way that if it gets to an unhealthy level, you might be too laser focused on just yourself and then forget everyone else around you. But the reality is, if you are a human living in this world, you are impacting the people around you. And so sometimes you forget that if passion gets to a toxic level. Sort of like that movie that we talked about last week, the Jadine one.
Right, never not love you. Uh, so okay, I love this movie because I think it really shows that dichotomy or that difference in perspective. So in that James Reed and Nadine movie, James Reed plays a creative guy. He's a
Yeah, like
tattoo
the tattoo
artist.
artist.
Yeah, and there's one scene where he asks Joanne what her thing is. And then she says, wala, like I don't have a thing.
Mhm.
And he describes thing as what makes you you, what makes you feel alive. And then she says, maybe my family.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
mean, like I
James Reid's
said,
character said, "Di ba, hindi pwede na family. It has to be
right.
yours.
Yeah,
Your
and then
thing is
yeah,
yours."
exactly. And then she goes, siguro wala pa nga, hanapin ko pa. So I'll still find it. So yeah, I like so it's really not the only way that you could be
Mhm.
looking at career.
Yeah, it's a privilege. Even us being able to talk about these things, like this is a privilege if you even have the option to
Right.
think about your passion and your career. So, yeah.
Exactly. So let's just summarize what we've been talking
Mhm.
about career and passion. So I guess with career, we can look at it as the concept has changed over time. And before, if career was viewed as something that you just did for your whole
Mhm.
life, like it was just career, family, and that was it. Now
Mhm.
we live in a time where you need to keep adapting. There's just so many changes happening, and there's also so many different options for you to do a different job or different career.
Mhm. And then passion is more around what makes you happy and what makes you satisfied. But this is also where we have to be careful about what level am I in now? Is this still a healthy level where I'm using my passion as a cue that can give me what I'm interested in? Or
Mm,
am I in that level where it's becoming really toxic and I'm forgetting about everything else around me? I'm just zoning in on me, and what I want.
right.
Mhm.
So what can we do now? How do we go about this in a way that's intentional, and taking kind of the healthy stuff,
Mhm.
the good things that we get out of thinking um, about our career, and how can we improve that?
Mhm. Yeah, and right, our title is Redefining Passion and Career. And so we're not saying at all that career or passion are bad concepts, right? Like that's why there are healthy levels of these things. I think what we're trying to say here is let's redefine it because there may be a concept out there that can give you all the benefits of passion and career while also putting it into context of where we are now, like what is happening in this present. And for me, at least, something I use a lot in my own work with professionals, with different organizations, is this concept of purpose. So that's the concept or the topic that I gravitate more towards versus passion or career.
Yeah, I only learned of purpose through you actually. I never thought about it that way. And when you did explain it to me and you helped me draft my purpose also, it was life changing, and it was
Mhm.
also kind of liberating to look at things in that way. So I guess what we'd want to do first is define it. Let's
Right.
define
Yeah.
purpose first because it seems like a really loaded word.
Mhm. Okay, so I'll give like the journal article definition and then I'll give a summary because I think there is value in the journal article definition and I'll read it because it's long. So, purpose is a moral strength that encompasses future directedness, long term goal commitment, connection to something larger than the self, and action in service of the greater good. So, this is from a study done by psychologists and they wanted to look at the benefits of having an idea of your purpose from like a young age, so adolescence up to adulthood. Like, does it really matter? And of course, yes, it
It
did because we're
does.
talking about it. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, that's the textbook definition, if you will. But for me, the way I like to explain it is at the end of the day, your purpose is really just the impact that you can uniquely create and that you want to create. So it's something in you that you have some skill in, you have passion in, maybe you've trained in, but it's also something that you have a motivation or a desire to do for a specific goal. for a certain something or people that you'd like to impact?
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really liked when you brought that up because you made me think also about who I want to serve and how I'm gonna serve people around
Mhm.
me, and but also making sure that it's something that I was happy to do. So I guess going back to figuring out that I do really like to
Yeah.
write, and I was able to zone in on the fact that I like writing about things that show our shared humanity, which is why I so enjoy features. I love interviewing people and getting even if you're whether it's a celebrity or whether it's like a person all the way in Isabela.
Mhm.
It's just so fun and fulfilling for me to be able to talk to them and share their story. So now I feel like I wish I knew that when I was younger, because then I would have known that wait, I'm probably not a fit for copywriting for a
Mhm.
website. But yeah,
Yeah.
but of course no regrets even then, because I was able to even then, like in the past jobs I've had, I've also seen that common thread that I really like, seeing connections with people. So that's why I was in government, because I wanted to serve people.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a really really great way to figure out what you want to do,
Yeah.
and in a way that you can serve others as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I was really lucky because very early in my career, I got introduced to that concept. And so I'll to give you a little bit of a background here. The first time I really heard about purpose as a big deal, it was in an information session. So my former employer is Microsoft. So we all know what that company is. They had an information session, and that was the first thing they talked about. Like the very first topic was, this is our company and this is why we exist in the world. This is what we are for. And so I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. So like to just think about why you exist and then introduce yourself in that way. And for me, then because I worked there and they've helped you figure that out for yourself, I came to the conclusion that what I really enjoyed was guiding people through also finding like what they're there for, what they'd like to do, and how they want to impact the world. And so for me, that is my purpose. Like I want to guide individuals and organizations towards defining and creating their impact on the world. So yeah, it really grounds you
Mm,
when you have that. So maybe that's the healthy level, right? Like it it's something that can ground you through so much uncertainty or chaos, because you know inside of you that okay, I there's something I can do to be able to
right.
change what's around me.
Yeah, especially in this time that I guess people are questioning what is really essential. Like
Mhm.
when we've seen what are essential goods, who are essential workers, it really kind of brings a new perspective to wait. What am I doing now? Is that useful? Is that meaningful? So, and if you're not clear about your purpose, you could feel a bit adrift. You can feel a bit
Mhm.
lost about it. So if you know your purpose, then it could anchor you back and be like, okay, wait, I can still find meaning in my work
Mhm.
this certain way. Yeah.
And with that, I think we have a third question. And I think this third question, it's more around I recognize that there's a world around me. I recognize that what I do will matter to another person. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what do I want that to be like? So, for me, the
Ooh.
question might be something like, what would the world miss if I cease to exist? So, very heavy. I try to like give a long pause for participants to think about that in a normal workshop. But there might be something there because then it forces quote unquote you to think about yourself and also other people.
Yeah, and you matter. It's just a really good reminder that you matter, even
Mhm.
if you think that there's so much going on in the world and you feel kind of helpless. But you're making an impact one way or another.
Yeah. So and I think that's the toxic level sometimes of purpose, right? When we say impact, we usually think like it has to be this world changing superhero moment kind of thing. I mean, I think that's what I hear a lot of clients say when we start
Mm.
talking about impact. But I do think that we have to redefine that too, because it's not just those huge things that are impactful. I've had a participant once in a workshop about purpose. And at the end of the workshop, this person came up to me and said, Ma'am, paano po ba yun? Ang gusto ko lang mabilhan ng bahay yung nanay ko. Parang mali yata yung gawa ko. So I'm like, oh, no, no, baby. Like, it's not wrong. Like, there's no right or wrong answer because that person was also impacting his family. And so it's so sad that we think there's a right impact or a wrong impact.
I like that you brought that up because I think the way that you're defining purpose, it's inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So it could really be like no matter what your socioeconomic background is, what your lifestyle is, you do have a purpose and you can
Yeah.
draft your purpose, you would say. I think that's another thing about how we think about it. We have to find our purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's the kind of unhealthy way that we look at it, that it's somewhere out
Mm-hmm.
there and we're missing something if we don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
As if we're incomplete, but the thing is we are already complete, we are already enough the way we are. I think it just takes so much more self-reflection, which I hope that people are able to do when they go through these questions, right?
Mm-hmm. You
Think
hit like a, a topic there that I feel super, super
yeah,
strongly about.
go go
um,
ahead, Elijah.
so
Take it
a
away.
lot of whew, like I can talk about this all day. There's so many articles and workshops out there, and they call it finding your purpose. And so
Mhm.
I've always had this negative reaction because it makes me think like, so I'm a clumsy person, right? Like I always drop things. So it makes me think like, oh, my purpose is like a pen and I drop and I'm like, oh no, it's lost. Where's my pen? But that's not it, right? Like it's not something you lose. It's not something you have to wait for the outside world to tell you about. Like this is something you can think of for yourself because it's already there in you. And I like draft. So drafting your purpose is the term I use because it means it can still change. Like maybe for now, that's what you have in you and that's what you'd like to do for the world or for the people around you. But it can change in 5 years if you learn something new about the world, right? And so for
Right.
me, in the age we are in now, I feel like drafting is a better and more comforting way to see it.
It is really comforting.
Mhm.
I really, really wish, like, my fresh graduate self knew that I could just draft it at first and not be so worried about screwing things up or feeling like if I didn't last in this job, I got it all wrong and that's gonna change my whole life. But no, it's not like that. Like I said, I have like zero regrets about going through my
Mhm.
jobs. Actually, the first job I had was teaching at a startup, and then my second one was at government and higher education, where I was in communications, and then now there's journalism. And I think like the common threads in all of those is that I just really love learning,
Mhm.
which I actually we say at the start. I think it's kind of our purpose that we mentioned at the start, right? I love learning and I love recognizing our shared humanity.
Mhm.
So I really wish that I knew that. But anyway, it's not too late, guys.
Yeah. What you said there just struck me a little. So you said something like you you were worried that you'll be wrong or something like
Mhm.
that is what you said.
Yes.
I think that's where a lot of especially fresh grads and especially people in like the 25, 28 category, like the ones who are moving into 30, um I think that's where a lot of us get stuck because we don't want to get things wrong. because you feel like time is moving really fast. I have to have this figured out now, or else I'm going to lose time. um,
Oh my
and
god.
so I like distinguishing between certainty and intentionality. Because I
Mm.
think when we say things like that, oh, I don't want to be wrong, that's running after certainty, which, as we all know, you can never be certain in life because COVID-19 can happen and all your plans can just say bye.
Exactly. Oh my
Right? And so
gosh.
going after certainty is just unhealthy. But if you go after intentionality is moving with deliberateness. So it's knowing that I don't know and then trying to be intentional about what I'd like to learn. So I think for me, if we kind of shift that need for certainty to make it about intentionality, that might be a better way to navigate through our crazy lives.
I love that because it also makes you a lot more grounded if
Mm-hmm.
you're just thinking about, okay, this is what my intention for this versus this has to be my goal that I'm chasing after. I think it's just, yeah, it's liberating also to think about it that way. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to add about drafting, or just finding your purpose, Elisha?
Well, I think that was the gist of it. It's really just it's comforting if you think about drafting instead of setting it in stone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think with that, we can actually go back to the three questions we've
Okay.
gone through.
All right. So, the three questions we had are: number 1, what are my long-held beliefs about having a career and where do these come from?
So I think this first question is really acknowledging that we have a lot of societal standards about
Mhm.
career, and that's also influencing our decision making.
Yeah. And then the
Number
second
two.
question is: when was the last time you slept at night feeling satisfied? So this one is more around what are those things that make you happy or those things that you feel proud of yourself when you do? Because at the end of the day, knowing what's innate in you and what's unique in you, that's something that can clue you in on your purpose.
And number three is, what would the world miss if I cease to exist? So it seems like a really loaded question, but actually, when you do get to reflect on it, it's also really heartwarming to think of, hey, wait, I do make a difference, even if it's to
Mm-hmm.
like one person or to my family. And we want to look at that impact, not necessarily as world changing. Of course, if we feel free, like if you're that ambitious kind of person, to think of it that way, but also it could really be something that is within your reach.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've mentioned, this is something that could change over time.
Yeah, and actually, even if you think it's just influencing or impacting your friend or impacting one other person, you never know. Like maybe that's already world changing. Because right
Yeah.
for me, like I think I have the beliefs that I have now because there are very specific people in my life who have shared with me so much about what they know. And so they don't even know that they mean that much to me, but just them living out their purpose helped me live out my own. So you never know whose life you're going to change.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've learned so much from somebody like Oprah, who's
Mhm.
literally done world-changing things. But also from the people around me, like my editor, hi
Mhm.
Jen, who shares with me all her life stories. So, you just never know
Mhm.
what impact you're making.
Yeah, and so that's why I think if there's any like lesson or nugget of information, I guess that I'd love people to walk away with, it's really that. Like, there's no one who can tell you if your impact is big or small. It's up to you to think about that for yourself. Like, what is it that you'd like to make happen? What change do you want to see? And if you know that in yourself and you can talk about it with other people, then you're not just changing your own life, but you're also showing others around you how they can make, just, it's so cheesy, the world a better place.
It's okay. I think we need that cheesiness now more than ever.
But yeah, right? At the end of the day, it's that. Like, if we all are working towards our impact, if we all have a purpose that we're holding on to, there's so much we all can do.
Yeah, so Elijah's really great at helping you draft your impact. And I can speak for that for myself and actually for my team also. So, Elijah, when do you get to teach people or when do you get to have workshops to help people out with drafting their purpose?
Oh yeah. So I actually have a workshop that I'm running. It's called Drafting My Purpose on June 20. So it's from 1:30 to 5 p.m. This is a very small group, so maximum 16 participants. It will be very interactive and you will walk away from the workshop with your drafted purpose statement. So yeah, if you want to know more about that, I think I'll post in our Ask Yourself Facebook
Yes,
page.
please
But
do.
yeah, we have an event page for Drafting My Purpose, and you'll see more information there.
Great. So I really highly recommend it. If you guys have not drafted your purpose yet, this is such a great time to do it. Um, yeah, so I'm really thankful to anyone who's been listening to this. Thank you also for letting us share our own
Mm-hmm.
experiences. Like, this is just a topic that means so much to me because of the many, many existential crises I've gone through. And I'm really thankful to have gotten clarity when I got to draft my purpose, which was just this year, guys. So yeah, never too late. Go draft your purpose.
Yep. I hope whatever we've been talking about for the past 40 minutes or so, I hope it's something that can at least bring you, some comfort and some grounding through the challenging months ahead. So,
Right.
with that, thank you so much for taking this time to learn with us and for asking yourself the hard stuff.
Bye.
Bye.